David, hello,
Hey,
sir.
Stu, you normally get us kicked off, and
Oh,
I
are you
just want
starting
to
this
say
one?
when I logged in, when I logged in, I was happy to see. So Adam, Stu is obviously, he's Texan. He lets everybody know he's Texan. All
Yeah.
Texans let everybody know they're tech from Texas. Like, got it. Um, but Stu, a lot of our guests recently have been awesome, awesome people, but all Texans. I feel like
Hmm.
he's trying to get like a corner on the podcast
Yep.
guest Texas market.
Yep.
But I was so relieved to hear you say that you are not a Texan by
No.
birth or even nature or
No.
character, but more so, you live there. So I, I
Yes.
uh I'm super excited to hear that to start this off because I'm like, man, another Texan. Great. You guys are gonna be up, double chucking and I just I
Not
feel
at
I
all.
feel certain ways about
Yes.
it.
Yes. No, I've lived here since '02, so 22 years. It's the longest I've lived in any state. However, I was not born here, so I can't claim it. My sons can claim it, but I can't claim it. I was born over in the DC area, so I'm an East Coast guy that has transplanted down here. Well, either way, we're excited about this conversation, man. We're excited about to diving into to your book and everything you're Yeah. doing in the leadership space. Interesting turn of events with leadership. I actually had a an interesting thing I saw this weekend Yeah. with my kids. I have a 6-year-old son, and he's like he's the captain of the baseball team, right? He's a leader of all like when you see a 6-year-old, he's a leader, right? He's independent. He likes to do his own thing. Like people follow, like all the kids follow him. He's kind of the cool Yep. kid. And this weekend we got invited to go out on a boat on a lake, and we went out with this other kid on. He's on his baseball team, and this other kid is like super shy, super quiet, doesn't want to talk a lot around the baseball team. And they wanted to go out on a lake, and they were being pulled, on a raft. And my son didn't want to go. He got Ah, scared. He got
Mm.
scared, and like he's like you wouldn't think he'd be the typical kid to like get
Right.
scared of going out on the boat. And this other kid, like the shy, like not talkative one, he was like super daredevil. Like he was the kid like standing up on the raft and like doing all these things. And like over time throughout the day, my son saw this and started to like watch this kid over and over to kind of do the more daring stuff. And my son was finally like got the courage up and he got out there, and then he stood up, and then he was like doing some other stuff. And like it was interesting to see this like kid who's like super shy.
Yeah.
You would never think as a leader lead my son
Hmm.
to where he got. And it was just kind of a cool thing that, it was almost like a role reversal in the
Yeah.
leadership space.
Yeah.
And anyways, it got me thinking about, our conversation with you and all the things you're doing in leadership. And just curious if you've ever seen anything like that in the leadership space of like someone that you wouldn't necessarily like first glance think as a leader, but like ended up he's like the leader of an organization. A ton of people follow him. I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really influenced by the classic book Good to Great, Jim Collins years ago, writing about the level 5 leader. And it's a pretty fascinating chapter in that book because he talks about these organizations that they were studying that took, went from being a good organization to being a great one. And they all had leaders with these similar characteristics. And he distilled it down to two things, which was this deep sense of personal humility mixed with this unbelievable personal ambition. And it was, if you read the names of those CEOs at that time, these are not names that you would recognize. And so for me, I've never been, I've been accused of being a lot of things in my life, but like charismatic, adventurous, never one of them. Okay. So that was very relieving for me to read his research on what it takes to be an effective leader because it opened up a whole new like realm of possibilities of what it means to actually be a person of influence. And so yes, I see that all the time that it's not the tall. I mean, a lot of times you can find all the examples of the tall, gregarious, charismatic leader that's out front. They typically make headlines. They're they have great sound bites on social media. We kind of see them as these great leaders, but the ones that are actually getting stuff done are typically maybe a little bit more like that other the other player on the team, a little more soft spoken at first, but then you realize you watch them and you go, oh, okay, there's something there, and I'm going to follow that person.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to make one point of clarification as well. In Stu's family, the apple fell far from the tree in that situation. So I just want to highlight that. But um, one thing, a huge lesson for me, when I was in the Navy, I went through the excuse me, I went through the commanding officer school.
Right.
Uh, you you have to go there in order to become a commanding officer, which was kind of the pinnacle of my career. At a point to highlight this, they run you through personality tests, and I was fascinated that the majority of the class were all introverts.
Hmm.
And it's not, it was only, it was fascinating in the sense that you have an expectation or a thought of what you believe the key leaders in the military and in this realm are, and it's vastly the reality is vastly different.
Hmm.
And so it was such a fascinating lesson for me to learn because I'm more
Yeah.
of the excuse me, I'm a little bit I apologize for coughing beforehand. um I'm a little more, not a little more. I'm pegged on the extrovert. I very much, I wouldn't characterize myself as charismatic, but I'm definitely much more in the realm of comfortable around a bunch of people,
Mhm.
outgoing, and it was fascinating for me to see that the characteristic of leadership had nothing to do with the E or the I or any of that
Yeah.
stuff. And if it did, the data would suggest the I was more predominant. And
Yeah.
it was just a fascinating lesson for me to learn.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I guess if we think, I mean, if you think leadership's a gift or a skill, if you think it's a gift, then yeah, we are all going to just believe that it's the charismatic person, the tall person, the loud person, because that's just the way they were born. And so, of course, they can command a crowd or they can get a bunch of people to follow them. But if you believe it's a skill, which I'm sure you all believe, and that's certainly what I believe, then yeah, it really goes to the diligent. The diligent can start to learn these skills of influence and learn these skills on how to manage people and how to inspire people and how to move people from point A to point B. And so, yeah, maybe in that case, I haven't seen that research, but that's really interesting. Maybe in that case, yeah, the introverts because they'll study and practice it a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah,
more. They've got
yeah.
more
The
time.
extroverts just want to go hang out, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
like,
they're just
I
having
don't
fun,
have
having
time.
fun.
Yeah, they're having fun. My first question. So I want to get to the book, and the book is, the edge, how to stand out. There's a couple things that I noticed immediately that I absolutely love about the book.
Hmm.
One edge is as and this is as a military guy. So edge is
Yeah,
an acronym, right?
right.
It's energy, diligence, growth, and endurance. But one thing that stuck out to me about the book is it's very, very much action oriented, which I
Hmm.
absolutely treasure. But
Yeah,
but I'll be honest with you, like it was overwhelming. It was almost like those four letters could have been a book. As much time
yeah,
as I wanted to spend and dig into each, and structurally, you basically have you have the chapter, or you have the parts, right? So you have the
yeah,
four parts, and in the parts you have three chapters per part, and then within the chapters you have three ideas. Well, you have some
yeah,
subsets, but you also have three ideas per chapter. And I'll tell you, as a military guy, I was like, oh, I love this structure. It is so like the framework is absolutely beautiful. Like I loved it. And I knew
yeah,
exactly after the first chapter, I'm like, I knew exactly what to expect, right? I knew I was going to get
yeah.
another chapter. I knew I was going to get 3 points, and I knew there's going to be a ton of action items in there. So I commend you for that as a
Thank you.
military dude. The framework was fascinating. But I'm just curious, like what caused you? Why did you choose that? Why did you
That
choose that? And
that
then the follow
structure.
on is, yeah, that structure, and then
Yeah,
and then follow on. Are you not suggesting it, but I would love it. Are you gonna plan on any follow up like workbooks, or I know you have classes online that you offer.
yeah.
I'm not sure if they dive in specifically to that framework, but as a follow on, what is that coming next? Because I'll be honest with you, I was slightly overwhelmed because I wanted to take way more action than I felt capacity to
Oh
do,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's how rich the book is.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That's really interesting to hear all that. So yes, I'm not a military guy, but I started my career as a CPA. So it is a structured that is a total reflection of my personality. And then there is a part of the structure that once I landed on it, well, now it's just this formula, and I don't want to say that it makes writing the book easier, but it at least gives me a I know what I'm trying to do to accomplish each chapter, which is let's have some stories, let's have some illustrations, and then let's end with three very practical points. So, I mean, David and I, when we set out to write the book, there were a couple things. Number one, we like books that make us smile or laugh a little bit. We like books that move quick, because there's something like he and I, we joke, we are not hunters or avid outdoorsmen. So the closest we get to like putting a fish on a wall or like the deer head on a wall is taking a book and putting it on the bookshelf. Like that just feels like accomplishment for us. And so we like those books that move really, really fast because it allows us to do that um, quickly. And so the structure was just helped us and helped it all move really fast. We don't have plans for any follow-up workbooks or anything like that. I mean, we feel like we kind of got it all out there. Certainly, and with my consulting firm, we do a lot of live teaching on this subject. So an organization that would have some emerging leaders, I teach the Edge class to them. So we get into a lot more detail there, and there's some more activities there. But no, we don't have any plans to publish anything else around this title.
Hey, speaking of, being a recovering CPA, can you just give us a little bit of a background in your story of who Adam Tarnow is and
Yeah.
kind of where you started and where you are now?
Yeah. So grew up on the East Coast, Silver Spring, Maryland, Manassas, Virginia. Went to school down at Clemson University in South Carolina. Third generation accountant, grandfather accountant, dad's an accountant. My birthday's April 16th, so it was in the stars. I had to be an accountant. And so I was one of those rare guys that went to college, never changed my major, never thought about changing my major. Faith became a really big part of my life right around my 21st birthday. I would not, I would have told you that I was a follower of Jesus when I went to college, but I very much had a works-based view of what that meant and thought that entry to heaven was just being a good guy that had more good deeds than bad deeds. That all radically changed around my 21st birthday. And so I left Clemson a very different man than when I showed up. Never really thought I was going to do much with that other than this is now a big part of my life. And so I just went down to Atlanta and got a job at an accounting firm. Got plugged into a great church down there as well. And so now this kind of duality, like where my life went, it was starting. So I was doing all this stuff in the organizational life at with the accounting firm, becoming a CPA, becoming a professional. But then I'm also getting plugged in at this local church, learning a ton about leadership, learning a ton of things about leadership in the church that was very surprising to me, that was highly applicable in my 9 to 5. So the things I was learning about how to be a better friend, a better son, I was also able to use that on how to be a better employee. And so life change just started going crazy there in Atlanta. Had a quarter life crisis probably right around age 25 and decided I wanted to work at a church. I wanted to be a part of the church that I was a part of down there. And so I started to pursue full-time ministry in my late 20s, and that's what led me out here to Dallas. And so I came here to extend my education because I was kind of a late bloomer with faith, 21 years old, didn't really grow up going to church. So I wanted to learn some Bible and theology. So that's what moved me out here to Dallas, was to do that. Did that full time for 2 years. Real long story, very short. Got married. We're sitting on $120,000 in student loan debt. I'm a seminary student. My wife's working at a nonprofit. We were paying more in debt payments than we were in rent. And so I dropped out of seminary to go back into accounting so that we could pay off all that debt. So paid off that debt, had a chance to go do now something different. So I actually went back and tried to pursue ministry. And so I went on staff at my church here in town for about 10 years. I thought I would do it for like 3 or 4, and it ended up being 10 years. Kind of on the side, I was doing a lot of leadership development with some accounting firms here in town. And probably around 2018, just started to realize I think that's where my next chapter is going to be professionally, is just focused on people development, developing managers, leaders. I don't know. I probably felt more of a sense of calling to go do that than I even did to go on staff at the church, as weird as that sounds. And so I've been doing this full time since 2020. So that's very, very broad brushstrokes there
Yeah.
on where that is. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. David and I talk about this a lot on the podcast and then in our men's group about just this balance. And it's interesting that you kind of said like, hey, I'm in the CPA world, and then I have this other world in the church, and I was learning, in the church, and I was taking leadership stuff from the church, and then I was plugging it in
Yeah.
to my work. And it seems like there's just like different buckets of our life, and they all kind of stay separated. And And, a lot of people talk about this work-life balance and does it exist? Can it exist? Is it really even a thing?
Hmm.
I'm curious what your viewpoint is on that, both the integration of faith into business and then also from a work-life balance perspective. Like how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've got my own anecdotal experience, and then I've got just some things that I got some research that actually has kind of backed it up. So I love what Gallup has been studying. It kind of comes out in their global happiness survey, and then all the little sub surveys that come out of that, and the results of their research. But their work on well being has been incredibly influential, and it was a big aha in my moment in my life. And that's some stuff that I've stumbled across this year. Here's what I would say about I don't think you get work life balance without work. And if I think about some of the work valleys, like some of the more, let's just use the word like depressing seasons of my life, it it had like one of the biggest factors was my work, and very specifically, and I think this is where there's some unlock in my mind recently. It wasn't the environment. Like as a CPA, I would go through that valley where I'm kind of feeling very empty, and I just thought, oh, it's this environment, it's this industry. So then I changed environments and I changed industries, felt a tremendous amount of flourishing working in the ministry. And then after about 8 years, I found myself feeling the exact same way. And that was very disorienting for me because it was like, hold on, I thought going on staff at a church was going to be this end all be all, where I was now going to be completely satisfied with my work. And then what it really got down to was when you look at it, it was not, I mean, and I was working with great environment. They treated me great. I felt like they paid me fairly. So all the things on paper, that should have been an amazing job. But the to-do list, I mean, and when I think about well-being, I think it starts, and this is what Gallup would say, it starts with career well-being, and then everything else flows out of that. And that for me, career well-being really boils down to, are you like when all the music fades and you have to be in your office or sit in your cube and do work, do you like that work? Because if you don't like that work, it doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. It doesn't matter who you're working with. There's a lot of factors that can be amazing. But push comes to shove, if you don't like the to-do list, I think you're going to be really worn out, and that's the recipe for burnout. So yeah, I think it's possible to find that work-life balance, and it really starts with finding that to-do list that you put any word you want in there. Do you love it? Do you like it? Do you find meaning in it? I think that to-do list is massive.
I love that. There's a couple things you said that really resonate. One, I think I personally found myself in a season where usually when we talk about work-life balance or we talk about balance, we disparage the work part of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
We highlight that the work part is the wrong part. And I love you just gave beautiful words that actually had for me was very impactful in the moment. You said you don't have a work-life balance without work. And that gave words and permission almost for me to be
Yeah.
like, man, because I'm in a season right now where I desire much more work,
Hmm.
and it ties to the to-do list, and it has nothing to do with money or any of that kind of stuff. It
Mm-mm.
has to do with how I was created. And
Yeah.
so I love that you said that. I'm gonna steal your line. Hopefully there's not like
Go
a
for it.
2 week limit on when I can take that.
Are
And
you
then
gonna
you said two
you're
other
gonna tweet
things.
it and say like that came from David
Yeah, I'm gonna
Eagles? You're
tweet
like
it on the
quote
Yeah.
yourself
Twitter or the X account that I don't
that
have.
you don't have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll put it on LinkedIn. That's all I
There you go.
do.
There you go. There you go.
But you also you said two things that really tied in directly into my next question. And I love you said experiences and you said to-do list. I love how you take on these ideas. There's a couple things that I loved about the book. One, I was shocked at how quickly I was reading it.
Yeah.
So when you said I want a book, like I thought, man, this is gonna be this is gonna be another one of those books I'm gonna slog. And I looked up from it. It was hours later. I was many pages beyond. I was like, man, this is a really good book. So I'm not even just saying that
That's encouraging.
to throw that out there. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. I love the references. There's a lot of Office. There's a lot of Elf. Picked up on some Elf. Picked up on some Ron Burgundy. Obviously, you call them out directly. Some of
Yes.
my favorite characters in the world. But you had a section. You also take on these ideas that are almost sacred cows, like Simon Sinek's Why. You took on the use of the word culture. You kind of take on the ownership. These things that are almost sacred cows
Yeah.
with other books, and specifically, I love what you said about motivation, and you're
Mm.
challenging the idea of the why, and specifically, you highlighted the difference between taking action and using your experiences to find our why versus endless thought exercises
Yeah.
of why finding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sitting around and trying to find it. And then you dove into motivation and its place in that equation, specifically as a puzzle and the challenge of eliminating the wrong pieces versus finding the right pieces. And so, first off, do you mind just walking us through what that looks like practically? Because I loved that picture, the puzzle picture that you painted.
Yeah.
What the puzzle
Yeah.
picture you painted, a lot of alliteration there.
Mixed metaphors,
But
but I get
also
you.
you said, right, but you also said it's not about money, it's about your to-do list.
Yeah.
And so with those combined, if you don't mind walking us, what does that look like practically?
Yeah, well, so there's some new thinking. I was standing in a class the other day, and like everybody was on a break, and we were talking about the difference between inspiration and motivation because I'd been using those words kind of interchangeably. And so, I mean, just candidly, I sat there and I just Googled what's the difference between the two. And somebody, it may have been their AI tool, but somebody said that inspiration comes from without and motivation comes from within. So we can inspire each other, but sooner or later, you've got to have that motivation inside you to get you up out of bed in the morning to take action because I can't give you a pep rally every single day, right? Every single moment of every day. We've got to have some motivation. And so I mean, that is the secret sauce. If I look back, so like The Edge was written to what out in the like in the industry they call like high potentials. So these are the 20 and 30 somethings that maybe are not people managers yet, but they want to get ahead. They want to be serious about their career. It puts some words to what a lot of senior leaders are desiring out of their team. And David's got a much bigger job that my co-author than I do, and with running over 300 Taco Bells and now throwing in a bunch of Seven Brews as well. I mean, I think of the 8,000 employees at his organization, something like 7,800 of them report to him indirectly as chief operating officer. And what as he and I were talking about that chapter, it was just like, listen, I understand part of my job is to be an inspiration, but I can't give pep rallies every day. Like the people who were really standing out and the blips on his radar that he was wanting to spend more time with and give more opportunities to were the people that were bringing that intrinsic motivation. Well, you just can't fake intrinsic motivation. It's got to be something that you actually really enjoy doing. So again, I get back to that to-do list. You've got to figure that out. And so the job hopping or all that kind of stuff that people do. I mean, the line that we said, I think in the book was like why do we make 19-year-olds pick a major? Because that for me, I was at the peak of my confidence, but the valley of my wisdom. And most 19-year-olds I meet are. And so all that to say, you got to run some experiments. And a lot of times people in their 20s, that's what they're just trying to figure out. Do they actually want to do what their major was? What is that thing that motivates them? And I believe everybody's got something. When you chase that, I think that's where life takes on a tremendous amount of meaning. So some of that's just some of the behind the scenes of what was going on with that stuff and things that we see.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a great line, by the way. I remember that line specifically. I read it over and over.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just 19-year-olds that are at the peak of their confidence
Yeah.
at the value, at the value of their wisdom.
It
But
may start
that
at
line really
19 and
stuck
it
with me.
yeah, it goes until maybe
I feel like it's
45.
carried into my 40s for some reason.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Hey, the first section of the book you talk about is energy, and it's something that we talk a lot about as well
Yeah.
inside the Connect Man Mastermind, and we equate this kind of pillar of energy to our health, all aspects of our health, having fun,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like that, liking the to-do list,
Yep.
and mindset, having a growth
Mm-hmm.
mindset, and that's
Yeah,
all a part of your book as well.
totally. Yeah.
You had a video on your website that I watched that was really interesting about you're talking about a lady in the nonprofit that you worked
Yeah.
at that was exponentially more successful than anyone else. because of her energy.
Yeah.
Why is that? What about energy does it really get to being a leader and growing in an organization?
Yeah, I mean, simply like let's just give the most shallow answer possible. Energetic people are a ton of fun to be around. They just are. I mean, like
Yeah.
if you like nobody wants to follow that pessimistic leader that's just like, guys, I thought about the future and it sucks. And so come on, let's
Those were
go, you
that
know?
David when he would talk to all of his sailors
Let's
and
do
Yeah.
his
this.
commanding officer, he's like,
Yeah, yeah.
"Hey, we suck."
Hey guys, it
Yes.
sucks tomorrow. See
Sucks.
it. See it work.
Yeah, maybe that works in the military. I don't know, but if I think
No,
about
it does not. It
the
does not.
others, so there's something about energy and positivity that's just like people want to be around it. Now, again, if we're talking to 20 or 30-year-olds, uh, just giving them some secrets about what senior leadership is like. Senior leadership, like most days, you're just putting out fires. It's bad news after bad news. Everybody that comes into their office and every email, they expect it to be something that's broken, something that's wrong. And so, what a breath of fresh air you can be by just smiling, energetic. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That sounds like a great idea. Let's go in that direction. And I'm just like, those leaders are going to just want more of you around them. And then it's going to give you more opportunities. And so that's why we put that in there. The part that I think is so ironic, and I when I teach this live, I was just down in Houston last week teaching this. What people need to know is that was the hardest section for us to write, very specifically the chapter on optimism. I have kind of self-labeled myself as being more naturally pessimistic than optimistic, and I just am now almost done with Martin Seligman's book, Learned Optimism, where he actually has like a quiz that you can take in there, and I now can confirm what my suspicions have said, which is for me, the tree leans more pessimistic than optimistic. So I just think that's important to let people know. When I'm saying energetic people are better to be around, I'm not saying, hey, I'm kind of awesome. I'm better to be around than you. I'm saying this is a real challenge for me. And I've just, as an honest observer of people and cultures and organizations, I watched people like my friend Caitlin Van Wagner show up and dominate. And now she had a lot of diligence. She had a lot of smart. She had great ideas behind all of that energy. But the first thing people noticed was her energy, and so it was just a great example of like, listen, that is the simplest way. Now, the hope that comes from all that is it can be learned. So even if you're not waking up every day super energetic, that can be learned, and that's what we tried to accomplish in that section was teaching how you can do that and be really authentic at the same time.
Well, and David, before your next question, which I know is going to be amazing, um, one of the, you gave a list. You gave a list in your book of like 20 ways to improve your energy.
Yeah.
And some of these things on the list, you kind of like, were like, what? Really? Like, get a pet, read a real newspaper. I mean, some of the things are like, yeah, eat healthy food, exercise regularly, go outside often, get 7, 8 hours of sleep. Some of those are like, yep, yeah, we all know that. But some of the
Yeah.
others are like, listen to podcasts, read more books, turn off the radio in the car, write thank you notes. Some of that stuff like, that's
Hmm.
interesting. But
Yeah.
yes, I can
Yeah.
see that. It's a great list. Get a pet. Explain to me how getting a pet gives you more energy, please.
Well, well, even if you're mad at the dog, it's better. It's energy, right? So
Fair.
I noticed. So my kids are 15, about to be 16, basically a 10th grader and 8th grader. So they like I walk home, there is no more energy in that house like there used to be when those kids come running towards me. The one who runs towards me when I walk in that house now is the 3-year-old designer doodle dog that
Dog, yeah.
I largely am mad at, but she comes running and it's just like the octave in my voice goes up and it's like, Peanut, what's up? And I just act like a fool for that 10 or 15 seconds when I come in, and it's just like it never gets old. It never gets old. So and then
That's
I'm sure
good.
there's some studies showing that pets make you happier in general.
Yeah,
So it's
that's good.
it's that.
It's actually, I was just gonna say, I read it. This was probably a year ago, and I've noticed it even yesterday. I remember specifically, I was observing somebody in a tent next to us, and it was a study that said that there's true endorphins or whatever is released. There's a chemical reaction when you pet a dog, but it also said that observing somebody else pet an animal also has a
Mm,
residual effect. And I noticed it
yeah.
yesterday. I was watching this person play with their dog, and I'm like, oh, that's so happy.
Yeah.
But and we have a joke in my house, and my kids will tell you, like, if my kids are on this podcast right now, and you say, hey, which one of you is your dad's favorite? And they all will say without hesitation, they'll be like, oh, that's Carlos is the dog. Because he's always so happy to see
He's
me. He's
there.
never on his cell phone. He's not texting. He's not doing that. He just wants to be by me. Actually, he's like sitting here by my feet. Like he just goes everywhere I go. But
Oh, I love it.
I think it's yeah, it is an incredible list. And it's funny how, as you're going through it, so I'm like, oh, I remember that list. And one of them was turn
Yeah.
off the news. I'll tell you, and what I love about this book, what you're just talking about, the energy piece. You mentioned something that really stuck with me. A lot of things, but one of the things that you talked about was ad hoc, and I didn't take any
Mm,
notes on it. But you talked about I'm not ad hoc. It wasn't ad hoc. It was improv. It was
yeah.
improv, and it was the idea to say yes and
Yeah.
right. And again, that is a very practical step that opens the door to optimism. It opens the door to energy that's positive, because the no's and the buts just naturally kill it. But
It
the
shuts it
yes
all down.
and, you can
Yep.
still express your concerns, but it's a very practical tool for people
Yeah.
who struggle. I don't really struggle with optimism, but like someone like Stu, who's kind of like a negative Nancy, like to start with yes and
Yeah.
is something I just stuck with me. It was something where I
It
was like,
is.
man,
Yeah.
that is a very easy lesson that I could just incorporate. And your book is full of them, right? It's
Yes.
not it, you acknowledge that you're a little bit more pessimistic, but like you said, the silver lining, the hope in that is, okay, well, what can I do? I could
Yeah.
be a yes and person,
You sure can.
which
You
is
absolutely
beautiful.
can. Yeah. And it's, yeah, just the basic rule of improv is there's rules that if I pitch a scene to you, you can't say, if it was like, David, it was great to see you at the gym this morning. You can't say, if you're going to be a good improv partner, you can't say, well, I didn't go to the gym. You have to be like, yes, Adam, it was good to see you at the gym. And I can't believe that you were wearing a tutu, right? And I can't be like, I wasn't wearing a tutu. I've got to keep going like, yeah, I was. I like wearing that. And I just can't believe you eat so many Pop Tarts on the treadmill. And we just got to keep going back and forth with yes and. And so what works in improv works in meetings as well. And so it's like, that's what's crazy about this. If I, go a little bit of like just about the culture is right now, if you want to sound smart in your next meeting, be pessimistic. You will sound smart in that meeting every single time. It's just that like pessimism right now, for some reason it seems like you're trying to help people if you're more negative and pessimistic, and optimism can be interpreted as I'm trying to sell you something. And so again, that's where I think as a leader it's is incredibly important to do that in an authentic way. Maybe a term, I don't know if I can't remember if it made it in the book, but it's one that I've been talking about more recently, which is like this idea of realistic optimism. So not calling bad things good. Like if something's bad, call it bad and see the opportunity that it presents there. So there's something about that and that yes and. And again, I just saw examples of this. My buddy John McGee uh, is like one of the best encouragers of men that I've ever met. And so one of the things he would do, so men, we solve problems, and so we've got a problem, we're trying to solve it, and I've seen him do this professionally and personally. Hey, here's the problem, here's what I think, and the first words out of his mouth almost every time are, that's a really good idea, and you clearly have thought through that, and I bet if we keep thinking through, we can maybe come up with another one. Or hey, I really like that idea, that may be the right solution, do you mind if we brainstorm a couple more? And there's just something about, like, as a man, when you hear somebody say, that's a really good idea, you really thought that through, that feels like respected or validated. And it just keeps energy flowing and it keeps the conversation going. And so I feel like, has been a great example of somebody who can disagree without saying no, but he can disagree by saying yes, and it's awesome.
And that's no, and I think what I love about that is there's an intentionality to it
Yeah.
that not only can be expressed, but an intentionality to it to change your habits to be that kind of
Hmm.
person, right?
Yeah.
That the language you use, and you talk a lot about your body language. Like if someone had a camera on you, what are they observing? Are you like a curmudgeon, Or
Yeah.
is there a smile? Is there ways that you interact? Because that speaks volumes. Uh, yeah, I'm looking at the time like, gosh, I have so many like I'm trying to put my questions in the order that I really, because there's three that I really want to get to, but you said in your chapter on gratitude, talk about being intentional. You said we are much too concerned with our rights and far too dismissive of our responsibilities.
Mm,
Be obsessed with your responsibilities and you'll see yourself granted more rights.
mm.
That was fascinating to me. And it also, that sentence being that we're more concerned with our rights and too dismissive of our responsibilities, that was in the gratitude section.
Yeah.
And I would just love for you to walk us through that a little bit, because I think too many of us are such victims. And I'm talking to my kids about this, and it
Yeah.
ties directly to later chapters on resiliency. It ties to so many things. But this idea of gratitude also being a mechanism through which you can be granted more rights, but you can also own your responsibilities was a fascinating
It
tie to
is,
me.
yeah, yeah, and I give a lot of credit to David. That chapter was largely a lot of his ideas. That sentence, if you know David Morrison, that is a David Morrison sentence through and through, right there with that idea. And and so listen, if there was a leader of when I was on staff at the church, the leader basically said like uh, at one point talking to us as staff, like I can't give you something that you've already taken, right? Very simple. And there are so many things with the rights and I'm entitled that it just feels like it's already been taken. And so now I can't give it to you. And so this used to happen with our boys with dessert. It just got to the point where at the end, after dinner, they're like, all right, so what am I having for dessert? And we were like, whoa, 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 you've already taken this, right? So you feel entitled to this. So now it's not a what? We get ice cream? Thank you. It was hey, what kind of ice cream do we have tonight? And so this idea of I can't give you what you've already taken. And so I think for us as just as I mean, I guess we could just say as humans, but specifically as leaders in an organization or really talking to like emerging leaders there, if we can just take a step back and just remember how much we've been given, that we're not entitled to a lot of things, it's just going to start to change your heart, and that gratitude is just going to come across. Again, that was in that section on energy. It just is going to come across as positive energy if you're saying thank you more. And again, you can't fake that, and it starts with that mindset. Do I feel entitled to this, or is this more of a responsibility? So hopefully that would be just some inspiration where people would find the motivation to be grateful.
Dude, that happens all the time with my kids.
Isn't it
Like
crazy?
and we try to not do, desserts every single
Yeah.
night of the week. It's like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And during the day on the weekends, like they might have some candy or something like that. And like we went to Friday night, they had like a back to school kind of fall celebration, whatever. And my son got like three snow cones, right? I'm like, dude, you just like hopped up on like sugar. He didn't eat a thing.
Yeah.
We get
Yeah.
home, we have some like dinner. He's like, all right, can I have my dessert now? It's Friday night. I'm like, dude,
You already
you
had
just
it.
had you just had three snow
Yeah.
cones at the birthday, or the party. Like, you want more treats? No.
That's
And
not
he
going to
got all
happen.
upset and like, "Ah, we get dessert on Fridays." No, dude. No.
Yeah. See, it's just
Uh,
so quick. And listen, it's easy to make fun of the kids with all that. It's like, all right, now start to audit your own life. And there's a lot of
Oh,
those things that we start to feel entitled to. So, what I love that David really highlighted in that chapter, that when we teach this to professionals, it's like, listen, gratitude, it's hard for me to think of a time where it's not appropriate. I'm sure there's some exceptions to that. But generally speaking, and especially if folks that are listening right now in that Gen Z or millennial category generation, like you're coming already with preconceived notions that you are entitled, ungrateful, judgmental. And so it's up to you to kind of rebrand that. I'm sorry that that's what some of the branding that's been put on you already. I'm sure it wasn't you that caused that, but that's some of what people are expecting now when younger generations are showing up at work. And so that gratitude can go a long way
yeah,
in some of that rebranding in an organization.
that's great, man. You had said something, you had defined leadership in a very simple term, very simple phrase. And I really enjoyed your definition of it. I'm curious kind of where it came from.
Yeah.
You said that leadership is taking initiative for the benefits of others.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So it's interesting. This is where like if I could go back and maybe retract something, that statement might be up for retraction.
Okay.
And so it's interesting, just my own nerd journey. Like the whole idea of what is a leader has been a question that I've been trying to answer for about 15 years. And the amount of confusion that I see. So every time I stand in front of a group of people, I'm going to do this tomorrow with a group of leaders in Alabama, and I'm going to say, what is a leader? And I'm telling you guys, and I'm sure you've seen this too, if I ask 25 people, what is a leader, I get 25 different answers. So for a
Yep.
long time, that I would go, put all your answers away. That's the answer. The answer is someone who takes initiative for the benefit of others. It was taught to me by my buddy Duke Rivard. He learned it as he was going through a church planning residency up at Fellowship Little Rock in Little Rock, Arkansas. I wish I could give the guys credit on who said it, but that's how it kind of came down to me. I think that is a definition of a style of leadership, which is often called servant leadership. It describes actions that you need to take. You need to be an initiative taker. It describes a little bit of the heart behind taking initiative, that hopefully it's going to be for good, for the benefit. And it also describes like the target for others, not just for me. It's a helpful statement. I don't know if it is the definitive definition of what it means to be a leader. And I think in some ways I was contributing to some of the confusion that I see out there that like really bothers me around what leadership is. And so real quickly, like I would love to know from you guys. So do you guys see that too? Like the what is a leader, and there being a lot of different answers, and what are some answers that you
Oh
all have
yeah,
come across?
for sure. I mean, one that I hear a lot is, doing the right thing when no one's looking,
Yeah.
kind of deal. Serving others, servant
Yeah.
leadership. That's a big one for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I find it. I think so I'm extremely passionate about leadership, and
yeah.
it's the reason I'm passionate about leadership is because what I've seen in my brand of leadership is I have seen when I'm effective, I serve others and empower them to be effective, and that's where the impact is, right? So, like as a commanding officer, the command had 350 some odd sailors and civilians. I stepped into that role knowing that I am not going to impact 350
Mhm.
individuals one on one or even in a group necessarily. I may give a talk and it may inspire or it may do something or it may turn them completely off. There's lots of things that could result from that. But I knew that if I took my key leaders and I poured everything that my skill sets, my passion, my service into them, they would then go and make an impact. And I'm not offering a definition of leadership in
Yeah.
that. What I'm saying is that leadership, I think we often like words like success and comfort. It's an idea that we have been fed that, hey, leadership is good. The word leadership is good. Like if I'm a
Yeah.
leader, good.
Yeah.
And it excuses us from diving deeply into what that means for
Yeah.
us. Specifically asking questions like, okay, do I believe God created me to be a leader? Yes. Do I believe God created all of us to be leaders? Yes. What does that leadership look like?
Mm.
And what are the giftings that I have been given to exercise the specific brand of leadership that God has blessed me with through gifting, passion, and all of it?
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I think it's one of those things that it sounds so cool. Like in the book you highlight culture. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean for me?
Yes.
What is success truly defined for me? And without the desire to deeply dive into that and to know ourselves and know how we can be part of a body or a community or however you frame
Yeah.
that, I think we shortchange what it is. And so I think the real challenge is like, hey, what does it mean? Because like Adam and David, well, me, David, and also David Morrison,
Yeah.
and leadership for each of us is going to be very different. And if we live in that, which goes to my last question for you. If we live in that, I think we can create a reputation and be true to ourselves And I can't think of I want to pull the quote that you said, be yourself. And then you threw
Unless you could
the
be
Batman quote.
Batman, then be
Unless you could be
Batman.
Batman, then be Batman.
Yeah.
But even how you broke that down, I think that goes to the point of leadership, right? Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of us we stop on be yourself, like who am I?
Yeah.
And we don't explore that. So I love
Yeah.
how you dive into that and in that context, I think it's in the concluding section of the book. I don't think it's part of the chapters, but you talk about reputation before presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely loved the idea of like that was very, very powerful. And I'm trying to formulate what that means. Because now outside of the context of the military and even where we left, it's past that kind of that 10 to 15 year
Yeah.
mark that
Yeah.
you identified. But in my home and in my community and with the football team I coach, and as we go into these ventures, what is our reputation and acknowledging that is being spoken about
Yep.
vastly more without us than with us.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sobering reality of let's just talk about organizational life is a lot of the decisions about the speed of your career and where it's going are made in rooms that you're not present. And that's just the way it is. And so that's reality. And so what is in that room in your absence is your reputation, is your brand, is your personal brand. And so, yeah, we put that as one of the concluding ideas on all of this. Go if you are known as somebody who's energetic, diligent, growth minded, and resilient, or the ability to have some endurance, then I think you can rest well at night knowing that that reputation that's in that room when you're not there is going to be a good one. And so people will speak highly of you behind your back that hopefully will help the speed and the direction of your career. And so some of this maybe back in the 90s, like when I first started work, it was what was talked about with executive presence. And I think nowadays I like this term better, the idea of personal brand, because I think that just resonates more. And it kind of sounds cool that you're a brand, but it basically, if a brand is just a gut feeling, then what I think of when I think of Starbucks or when I go to the airport today and what I think of when I think of American Airlines, in the same way, that brand people think about something when they think about you. And so heard it. I think there was a guy on LinkedIn last week that was talking about this, and he just said it's the cell phone test or the mobile phone test. What do people think about when they see your name pop up? That's your brand. And
Wow.
so these are some things that you can do to be energetic, diligent, growth minded, and develop endurance that will hopefully make that brand super strong.
David, we got to work on your personal brand a little bit because every time you ring, I'm like, got to
It's
talk
him
to
again.
you again. Uh.
Yeah, usually I'm just having a kid call you because I don't really want to actually talk to you. So it's usually one of my children calling in my stead.
Oh, that's good.
Adam, this has been a
I've
fun
delegated our
conversation.
friendships, Stu. I've
Yeah,
delegated our
thanks.
friendship,
Hey,
just so you know.
listen, let me just say one thing before we're done.
Yeah.
Because there is not like you guys read the book, and just on behalf of David and I cannot tell you how much that blesses me. And just the questions that you asked, it was clear that you guys had thought through this. And so I know you get a lot of guests on your podcast and a lot of authors, and that can be a lot of books. If I confess, have done some interviews for certain podcasts with authors that I did not read their books.
Yeah.
And you guys were not me. And so I just thank you. That really means a lot. Because you obviously you pour a lot into these books, and the level of detail and the questions. This has been phenomenal, and so I appreciate what you guys are doing, and hopefully today's episode it helps and helps
Yeah.
some other people out there.
Well, we enjoy it, and I mean, we get as much out of reading the book and having a great conversation with the authors as much as you do. So, we appreciate you writing an amazing book.
Yeah, well,
We
thanks.
enjoyed it. Yeah. Speaking of, how do people get your book? What do we put in
Yeah.
the show notes? Tell people where to go and find more about you.
Yeah, the best is Amazon. It's the quickest, the easiest, the cheapest. That's the best spot to go. I've got a podcast with my buddy Clay Scroggins that we put out almost weekly. So it's probably a good 48, between 45 and 48 episodes a year, called How to Lead. You can find that wherever you find podcasts. And those are probably the two best ways to stay in touch.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we need to get to the topic of podcasting. We'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Thanks.
Adam, this has been a fun conversation. We were
Thanks, guys.
blessed to have it, and you're doing amazing work. So keep it up. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
appreciate it.
All right, guys and gals, we'll put all this information in the show notes. Go read Adam's book, The Edge. It's a fantastic one. Thanks, Adam. See you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. Appreciate you.